All right, let me pull
Welcome
up the map.
back. This is episode 38 of the Epic Epoch podcast. With me, as always, is my co-host here, Dread. Dread, welcome.
Hi, it's Dread. And in today's podcast episode, we're going to be talking about Warlock. We're totally not a week late due to all the problems and issues recently.
No,
Totally
we
not a
have
week
all
late
the
at
information
all.
we need. We have everything spoiled for Warlock. Everything, totally everything, except for
Yep.
unique items and class affixes on your body armor and stuff, and unique items and idols.
It's fine.
And
Those
idols.
are
We don't
just
know,
all
but
the those are all
all
the
that
details.
garbage.
It's
We don't
fine.
have it. But we have mastery. We have everything that you can spec into your masteries and your skills. We have masteries.
All the curses,
We have
the
skills.
new curses.
Yeah, we have masteries and skills. And then we have masteries. Oh, we've got curses and skills. Okay,
Yes.
so we have masteries and skills, and we've got some build ideas. We're gonna be chatting about those, and I will be spending most of this stream trying to convince Dredd that the very first build he should play is using a two-handed sword with the acolyte. I want him to play Leviathan Carver, Chaos Bolt, Procking Harvest, so that you can finally get around the low attack speed of Leviathan Carver by scaling cast speed instead. And I think I've already
You know,
found
you could
Red's
just-
new favorite build.
You could already just play a War Slash on Warpath and do that.
It's have you ever you've played Path of Exile? You've played a witch, like the small 80 beta, like she's like 100 pounds, and she's got a two-handed sword behind her, or like a two-handed axe, and like the anime vibes are just excellent.
Oh yeah,
Like
it'll be great.
witch acolyte with a big two-handed
Oh,
weapon looks
you
so
know-
cool.
The most entertaining thing that Warlock has going for it, in my humble opinion, is the ability to look at all the new Acolyte armor sets without having to be a necromancer. Because if you're a lich, guess what? You don't get to see any of the cool stuff.
That's a
Because you're
really good point.
transformed. Now we can play a non-minion build and still get to see all the cool armor sets. Whoopoo! Woo! Right? Woo!
Yeah,
That's great.
My background on my PC for a long time was just the Reaper with like two weapons and looking really badass, and I do like Reaper form, but I also like what the armor looks like. It's funny on Reddit every once in a while you see people like, oh, I look terrible, I want more MTX and stuff, and I like MTX as well. Listen, I like some MTX. This game's base armor is
Yeah.
good.
Just give me
there
some,
is good
just
base
let me-
armor in Last Epoch. It
Let
looks
me
pretty.
like change the cosmetics and I would be happy. Like transmogs. And
Mhm.
that would all I would need, to be
Mhm.
honest. I like the current state of how we have MTX, but we also have good base armor as well, so we don't look like as though we have no pants.
So we have Warlock, and as stated, we're missing like all those tangent things, but we do have the mastery and we have the skills themselves. Where do you want to start? Are we going to start with your new favorite build, Chaos Bolt Procking Harvest? Do you want to start there?
How about this? We can start talking about each of the skills one by one. How's that sound?
Starting-
So which one
let's-
do you want to talk
I'm
about?
going to start.
first?
So we have our enormous monitor here showing everyone who is watching this either live on Twitch or on YouTube later on what we are discussing. So we are
By
pulling
the
up
way,
Maxwell.gg.
which was audience feedback, by the way.
It's true. It's true.
Because a lot of people were angry in the last tier list video we did for the uniques that the uniques weren't on screen. So here you go.
I
It's
always
right
thought about
here
this as like a
on screen.
podcast. Like, listen, I used to drive to work all the time. I would listen to stuff. I forget that people also have their monitors turned on. So we're going to provide some visual feedback for you as well.
Yes.
So,
All right. But we'll make sure to actually explain everything.
With Warlock, we're going to start with the most important skill, which is Chthonic Fissure. Not only is
Oh,
it a
yeah.
cool word to say, but it also procs everything. So you can click Chthonic Fissure, and through things proccing other things, and like directly proccing something or proccing something that procs something, you can proc. Can we do it? Let's do it. You can proc Chaos Bolt, Volatile Zombie, Infernal Shade, Sacrifice, Rip Blood, Bone Curse,
You can get marrow shards off the zombie. Too, by
Marrow
the way.
Shards. I think there's one more. I think there's one more thing you can proc.
Yeah, there's a lot of things you can do.
There's at least 7. I think there's at least 8.
Technically, if you put on the axe, you can proc sacrifice when the volatile zombie dies,
Oh.
or you can get sacrificed when the volatile zombie.
Yeah, from the skill tree.
Better.
Yeah, just from skill trees, like no items on. So Chthonic Fissure really ties the room together for lots of different skills and builds and archetypes. You can do minion stuff. You can do chaos, or sorry, not chaos, but like curse, spell damage over time. You can do a hit. You can do crit. You can do torment. You can do ailment. You can do bleed, ignite, poison. Like it hits a lot of angles.
It really does it all. I think Chthonic Fissure is the perfect kind of skill that you'd want as a mastery skill, as it ties the whole class together and what it wants to be. And then, then we compare it to something like, Meteor,
Meteor is something Meteor is like a direction that you can go, but it doesn't tie everything else together. Chthonic Fissure is central to what Warlock is.
It is Warlock. Like when you get that as your mastery skill when you're leveling, because you're going to get it at level 15, you are just going to blaze through the campaign. It's like having Storm Totem from Shaman. It's like you put it on, bam, down on the ground, time to go, right? Like you just put it on the ground, run, kill things.
Twitch chat's relating it back to Runic Invocation from Runemaster, which is the other very recent introduction to Last Epoch that we've had. Like that's another skill that really ties the room together. You can use it.
I like Chthonic Fissure more because it's probably not going to be bugged to shit when it comes out.
So Chthonic Fissure, you open up a vent to hell and stuff pops out of it depending on how you spec into it. It kind of feels like Holy Trail Javelin. Kind of looks like it's a straight line, and you can make it longer. You like put it down in front of you. You walk over it. Enemies chase you over it, and they die behind you. It looks mechanically. It has AoE. It has a duration component. It shoots out little spirits that auto target enemies and deal damage in AoE. It lasts for mechanically. It looks like a skill that's going to be super strong for leveling. Whether you're doing crit or hit or curse or damage or like anything, however you spec it, it looks really good for leveling.
And what I really like about this is covering on one of the criticisms I've had for a very long time for the game, is if you're going to have something have like a 45 mana cost, it better do 45 mana worth of things, right? And Chthonic Fissure definitely does its mana cost worth of things, unlike some other skills, right? You can literally be like, hey, sure, it does a bunch of stuff, but it kind of has a mana cost, right? You have to manage it, right? And that's what I like about Chthonic Fissure, is it actually does something amazing. We have our skills actually do things. And what I really like about it is specifically its synergy with like Infernal Shade specifically. So if you don't know, there's a node inside Chthonic Fissure. It's called Return Below. And the idea here is it makes it so that the Infernal Shade essentially pops once it's hit by a spirit, like once the enemy is hit by a spirit, and it functionally makes your Infernal Shade into like an Abyssal Echo-like effect, where you cast your Infernal Shade, you get it popped with the Torment, then you cast another Infernal Shade, and this kind of gets around the problem that Infernal Shade has, where you can only put one Infernal Shade on each enemy at a time. Now, I actually recently just played an Infernal Shade build on Necromancer, where you put the weight on the ground node and then, of course, refresh the duration. But this is the exact opposite way of going about it, where we're just going to go through as many Infernal Shades as possible. And I really appreciate this kind of design because it opens up a lot of different builds just with Infernal Shade itself.
There's 17 different builds that are going to end up being good, if not great, with Chthonic Fissure. The interaction that you just outlined, I would use it in a completely different way. Your build and my build would look similar, but I'd be doing a completely different thing with it. You want to use Return Below and cast Infernal Shade and have the Infernal Shade deal damage? Well, the rest of this paragraph of text says that it causes Chthonic Fissure's frequency of releasing spirits to increase up to a maximum of 60% increased frequency. And to me, I don't want to spec Infernal Shade to deal damage. I want to spec Infernal Shade just to do utility, or maybe nothing
you don't
at
even
all.
have to spec it.
Maybe just nothing at all.
Yeah.
You just click it. And all of a sudden,
instead of clicking, you can automate it with the summon zombies.
Or you could even use what's it called? That unique dagger? Ghostmaker. You could have Ghostmaker automate the creation of your infernal chant. Before I get ahead of myself. So it does two things. It consumes, or it causes your infernal shade to deal damage instantly, so you can build around that. And then it also increases the frequency of your existing chthonic fissures and makes them spit their spirits faster. And I want to build around that. This is such a good node. It's one line of text. It's one little node here, 1 out of 1, and you can already do 2 or 3 different things with it. That's awesome.
Yep, it's very good. I agree. I enjoy it.
So what about the thing on the very bottom right side? Why did they put Rogue into my Warlock?
Oh, Acid Skin. Well, at least this time we actually know what it does in like critical vulnerability when they changed
it. But this is crit vulnerability. It
is, but like I think it's better in theory. Like technically, it is better. Essentially, the idea with Forbidden Chasm is we can apply. So there's a node behind it that is called Pyroclasm. So normally, Fissure is a damage over time skill that you put on the ground, but you can spec it much like Hail of Arrows, where you can get an additional hit out of the Fissure. So it'll be like a fire damage hit with 300% effectiveness of it, called Pyroclasm. Then it allows that hit to apply a new curse called Acid Skin. Now, Acid Skin makes it so that enemies, I think, deal less damage over time, and also, of course, give you a 20% just flat crit chance to any enemy that's hit by it, and with any hit. So you can use.
Actually, Mr. Streamer, it is a chance to receive a critical strike chance. So this is crit vulnerability.
Right. Yeah.
So this is like instead of needing 100% crit to crit cap, you only need 80% to crit cap.
Yeah. So this is really strong in like it'll make Chthonic Fissure into a very good utility skill. You just plop it on the ground, all of a sudden you're crit capped. Like with anything that like gets hit by it. And then of course there's the node afterwards that makes it so that you get even more crit chance based on your increased poison damage as well, which is really strong. The main reason why this is cool is if they keep introducing items like cast on crit items and stuff like that, this will make a Pyroclasm like cast on crit kind of thing a little bit more interesting, because you can cap crit very easily on an enemy. So you put in the Chthonic Fissure under the enemy and you hit them, and then now you can crit them as much as you want to proc whatever you want. So technically, Warlock Meteor Cock or whatever could be a thing with this. You could like make it much easier to reach that like percent. And then of course the Tormented Spirits will go out and like hit multiple times. Like Chaotic Rupture would go out and like hit a bunch of times with Chaos Bolts. Now, of course, how would you sustain the mana? No idea, but it is a thing. It is there.
I'm literally 12 years old. Can we call the build something else? Do we have to call it that?
We have to honor our ancestors, the people who played before us.
So I was making a list of like build around nodes. I was like, okay, so you could build it this way, you can build it that way, and it really feels like within Chthonic Fissure here, every other node is a node that you could make into a build around node. You like, okay, this is the focal point of my build. This is the like this thing. It says, what is it? Chthonic Fissure deals more damage per added crit multi. It's like, okay, well, all of a sudden you're like a Chthonic Fissure, like your crit build, but maybe you're also dealing damage over time, and like they're both being scaled by crit multi. Like that's awesome.
Yeah.
And ailments and inflicts deal more necrotic damage. Okay.
What's really cool with this, with Grim Tide, is normally the Fissure is fire damage over time. That's what the Fissure does. And any adaptive damage you apply to it is fire damage. So this node normally, to the untrained eye, would be absolute garbage. But thankfully, we have plenty of ways of abusing this. Like, for instance, a not mentioned much unique, but very strong unique, Marina's Lost Soul. If you read Marina's Lost Soul, I'm bringing it up here on my own monitor so I can read it. Here it is. Its base is 66 spell necrotic damage, and it also adds 25 spell necrotic. So it forces the damage over time to be necrotic, so you deal more damage over time with Chthonic Fissure with this node per added critical strike multiplier, because all your damage would be necrotic. Or, and it does not specify here, you can actually grab Pyrochasm, the crit hit, right? And then get the necrotic more damage with Grim Tide, because it does not say necrotic damage over time. It just says more necrotic damage. So if you use a Marinas to force your damage to necrotic, then use Grim Tide, that essentially makes your crit multi not only like give you a bunch of, crit multi, right? It also gives you an absolute insane amount of damage.
So your Chthonic Fissure by default, it has damage over time component because of the torment curse that it applies, and then it also has like damage over time from the spell. And then if you're taking this node on the right side, it has like this hit component to it. And it's important to know that the spirits, they also have a hit component to them. So like there's a lot of mixed hybrid damage types here, which is very cool. It seems like we actually have ways to scale most, if not all of them, which is neat as well.
Yeah, and just the ability of being able to manipulate the skill into doing what you want and then being benefited for doing so is very cool, it turns out.
Mm-hmm. All right, so are we going to spend the entire stream talking about...
We can obviously talk about...
We could talk about one thing for the entire stream.
We can talk about the last node here. We could talk about Chaotic Rupture if you want.
Sure. Yeah, this is going to be a very popular node. For sure. Like
yes.
a number of different builds. This is the node. Spirits have a chance to be replaced by a cast of Chaos Bolts that consumes a portion of its mana and scales with your Chaos Bolt tree. They have a chance for no additional projectiles. So with this, you can also proc a number of other skills using the Chaos Bolt tree. Let's go pop open Chaos Bolt real quick, just like this. So in Chaos Bolt, we can do some volatile zombie stuff over on the right side. We can proc Bone Curse, we can proc Rip Blood, we can do some bleed, like that cold damage bleed conversion stuff, something.
Yeah, cold res to physical damage time. Then of course there's the harvest as well.
Of course, how could I forget having a melee skill proc at range off of my spell? My bad.
Yeah, that's going to be very entertaining. So what you can do is essentially put down Chthonic Fissure, have some of the spirits poop out chaotic chaos bolts, and those chaos bolts on hit can trigger Rip Bloods, and they can also proc harvest, and of course you can eventually get Bone Curse as well. But all of that combined means that you can have essentially what I'm going to call the proc lock. You're going to proc as many things as humanly possible from one Chthonic Fissure, and that's going to be all of your clear. And then for single target, you just swap to like Chaos Bolts.
Or you just put down a Chthonic Fissure that casts Chaos Bolt, and then you also cast Chaos Bolt. Or what else you could do, if like maybe it's going to be intensive on your mana, you could just like put down a Chthonic Fissure for single target, and then cast Rip Blood, and Rip Blood self-direct casting it's going to give you flat damage, and it also refunds your mana. Maybe that's a way you can do it.
Going. Yeah, definitely. Or you could just use Harvest.
You could use Harvest in order to deal melee damage
and get your mana back. Totally.
Sure,
the idea is, so what's really cool about all this is we can make Chthonic Fissure scale for bleed. We can make Chaos Bolt scale for bleed. We can make Rip Blood scale off of bleed.
That's true.
And we can also make Harvest scale for bleed. They actually
and then use the Torcreffin's Hunger, another two-handed melee weapon. Yes, Dread. Yes, Dread. It sounds so cool.
Spell. Wait, that would work on the melee hits. I don't know if you have to use it though. That's the problem. Let me look at the.
Someone in chat says, "Why cast Rip Blood when you can just use the Bleed Overload?" First of all, haven't even gotten to talk about the overloads yet. Second of all, the mana refund and the stacking flat damage to your spells only happen on direct cast. Unfortunately. Dread, go ahead.
So Torgriffin says when you use a non-channeled melee or throwing attack. I can't remember what the technical capabilities of that is, like when you use it. I don't know if that would count as you using it with Harvest, but I'll be honest, that wouldn't be very good in my opinion. So.
Yeah, I don't think it's good either.
Yeah.
But Leviathan Carver.
Cool. Yeah. Oh boy. Yes, there is a dumb build where you can, if you don't know what Leviathan Carver is, it is a big two-handed sword with very low attack speed per second, but it has a massive amount of flat damage, massive amount of percentage melee physical damage, and physical penetration. And the idea of this sword is to utilize it without incurring its downside of the low attack speed. And Chaos Bolt's proccing Harvest is the perfect way of utilizing it because you do not have to deal with the downside of having a big, hefty Leviathan Carver. And thankfully, just recently, right, EHG added a node in Acolyte or Harvest that converts it to physical, so we don't have to worry about the our damage types being, mixed. So we can have it all be physical.
Wait. Have a chance per dexterity to attack with Harvest. Dexterity, Morning Frost, cold damage. We could be a Morning Frost, dexterity stacking, Chthonic fish. Oh my god.
You're right. You know what you do, Perry? You know what you do? You play with the new node, you play with the old set. Whereas the Forgotten Knight set, the Forgotten Knight sword set. Yeah, you use the Shatter of the Shattered Lance, and since those don't have attack speed on them, you get around the downside, huh?
Yes.
Ooh, that might actually be fun. And since the Shatter of the Shattered Lance, essentially it it has a bunch of melee cold on it, so it overrides the flat damage on Harvest. So we won't have to worry about converting Harvest, which is cool. Yeah, that could be a fun one too.
Yeah, I'm into it.
Now that we're talking about Chaos Bolts, we might as well just start talking about
Chaos Bolts. I real quick, Dread, how are you going to get all of those unique items and set items at the very beginning of a league? Are you just going to farm them all up by yourself? Or are you going Merchant's Guild?
Oh my goodness.
Are you going Merchant's Guild, Dread?
So we realized the last podcast where we talked about Merchant's Guild and trade in MG plus COF, we realized that Perry and I are very biased in our views upon COF, meaning that to essentially make a better podcast experience for you all, by the way, I am going to be playing Merchant's Guild so that we can have conflicting views on the differences between COF and MG. Essentially, I'm becoming a trader. I'm turncoating so that I can collect information on the enemy side.
But you're doing it for Twitch chat. You're doing it for the people.
We're doing it for the people.
We that's right, we are.
Now, it was funny because we were talking about this last night. We're not going to go too deep into this, but essentially, I'm not going to have problems with Merchant's Guild. Like, I'll make plenty of currency. That's not a problem at all. It's more like your casual that's going to have a problem eventually when they get, when they start dealing in multiple LP items. But we won't get into any of that because that's topic for another time. But
all right,
we can talk about Chaos Bolt.
Let's go back to these 5 skills. We talked about Chthonic Fissure. We all love it so much. We'll talk about Chaos Bolt. We're going to go through the other 3 skills as well. Soul Feast is going to be very easy to breeze past. And then we're going to go to the Masteries. When we get to the Masteries, we will cover all of the overloads at that point as well. The overloads, if you don't know what they are, stay tuned. You're going to love them.
We're probably going to skip Soul Feast, by the way.
Yeah, it's fine. So Chaos Bolt doesn't really seem to have many more multipliers by itself. The biggest more multiplier that it has is this one here, which is 4 separate more damage multipliers, but it's all hit based. So we have one really interesting, deals more damage over time equal to a portion of your missing health, and it's per flat missing health. So if you have 10,000 health, this node's insane. And then
you
the
also
hit
have
damage
the physical
node.
damage over time node too.
The bleed one here.
Yeah.
But other than that, you don't really have many more damage multipliers. You have increased area over here. You have extra projectiles. You've got some mana cost stuff. It's really just 1, 2, 3 in terms of the biggest source of your damage. And then there's some ailment stuff as well. So I kind of like the direction of this. I know that there's more multipliers on the mastery and there's fewer more multipliers on the skills themselves, but I still like that. It's a good step toward getting the more damage multipliers off the skill gems themselves or the skill trees.
So it's going to be much like Frostclaw, where instead of scaling more damage directly, you're going to be scaling more damage and what the person just said in chat, doesn't the skill innately have a more multiplier shotgun? Yes, it does. Yes, it definitely does. If you get multiple projectiles, they can all shotgun with enough area, and that'll make percent area actually a very good stat on gear for this skill. But you can also proc other things, like you can proc harvest 3 times per second. If you're playing a bleed chaos bolt build, you can not only benefit from the bleed procs from chaos bolt, you can also benefit from bleed from harvest and not have to actually use harvest, which would be very bad. Thankfully, you don't have to do that. You can just proc it.
Mhm.
The same thing with Rip Blood. Rip Blood will give you a lot of extra damage just by existing, right? So this skill is going to be very strong, but not because it has 60 gabillion more damage like Earthquake. It's going to be strong because of its synergies with skills and its synergies with the rest of the mastery and everything like that. Now, what most people don't realize is Chaos Bolts is not a Warlock skill. It is an Acolyte skill. It's at the base of Warlock, obviously, right? Because they got to put it somewhere. But you can use this as a Necromancer or a Lich specifically. So a lot of these builds that we're looking at, like for instance, Bleed Chaos Bolts, it might just be better to be a Lich because the Bleed Overload is at the bottom of the tree. So it's not like as if you have to go too far to get Bleed Overload. So Chaos Bolts is going to be like the hit Chaos Bolt and the Bleed Chaos Bolt are definitely going to be probably end up being much better on Lich specifically. While of course all the other versions will be better on Warlock, at least in my opinion.
Well, if you go Chaos Bolt, like you don't get to automate it with your Chthonic fissure anymore. You don't get the
Well,
more
yeah,
damage per
but-
curse on the enemy.
But Chaos Bolt's like just insanely strong, and also being Lich is insanely strong, as you
It's true.
very well may know.
Lich do be pretty good, I hear.
Which is pretty good. So I think it's completely fine if you give up.
Have
those
2 life
Lich.
bars, have Death
Yeah.
Seal, have Overleech. Yeah, it's pretty good.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool.
Yeah. And what's really cool is you have this one node that I'm the most excited about. The gate. Hitting your minions with Chaos Bolts grant them any damned, ignite, bleed, or frostbite chance that Chaos Bolts gain from this tree. So the idea with this is we grab all of the chance to apply ailments on the tree, we grab all the chance to apply ailments everywhere else, and then we just try to get as much ailment chance as possible for our skeleton minions or whatever we end up playing, right? And we just scale it with generic minion damage over time and intelligence scaling and stuff like that. And this is really good. This is good. Like Chaos Bolts is actually going to end up being a really good Necromancer skill, especially with the other node at the other side of the tree, with of course Revolution. Whenever mana is consumed, mana anarchy, which is the node behind it, your minions gain additional spell damage based on your maximum mana, and they also gain increased cast speed. So I don't know if this stacks. Even if it doesn't stack, this is still really strong. Let's assume that you have like 300 mana, right? That is 15 flat spell damage. What do you think is the base amount of damage that most minions have? 20 flat damage. This almost doubles your damage just with one stack. Now, if it does stack, this node is one of the strongest nodes in the entire game. As this node's going to be ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous, because you're going to be able to get your, I think, skeleton mages a bunch of flat damage. You're going to be able to get your flame wraiths a lot of flat damage. You're going to be able to give your I guess technically like bone golems, if you don't go like the proc version, you go like the one with like the AoE or whatever. This would also apply to like infernal aura golem as well. But his thing snapshot, so you have to like make sure you have the buffs up before he does that. Like there's a lot of different builds that this is really good for, especially like solo mage, right? Solo mage, specifically Fred the mage. This is going to make solo mage into a competitive build with like all the other necromancer builds instantly, because all you got to do is just cast some chaos bolts, and all of a sudden Fred the mage has well over 100 flat damage, and that is a lot, by the way. That is a very large amount. Sorry, I'll stop gushing over chaos bolts now.
No. I was like, I'm so glad that somebody is excited about the minion stuff because I just start falling asleep. Like,
it's okay. It's fine.
Poor minions.
I'll do it for you.
I've heard rumors of these nodes here being strong, and they certainly have the damage numbers to back them up. So remember, you can also proc Chaos Bolt off of your Chthonic Fissure, and Chthonic Fissure can also proc volatile zombies. So it summons zombies for you, it summons Chaos Bolts, the Chaos Bolts hit your zombies, and then it gives them 35% more damage and also gives them 75% more damage, which is like 120% more damage.
I have a really cool build that is going to utilize those nodes, but sadly, due to my own self-inflicted NDA, I cannot talk about it as it's going to be one of my friends' builds.
These nodes seem, they got really big numbers on them. They seem pretty strong.
Oh yeah.
I don't know how your mana situation is going to be if you're trying to incorporate all these.
Turn off the stream.
Turn off the stream.
Turn off the get rid of everything.
All right, let's talk about another skill. We're not going to talk about Soul Feast. Soul Feast is a former Lich skill
it's like
that got
a
moved.
Rework node, and I can give you a very quick summary of how
what's the summary of this node right here? Go ahead.
It's cool, but it's still Soul Feast. All right, you can continue.
All right, so Soul Feast caps your armor, basically unchanged. If you like it, you like it. If you've never played it, try it out sometime.
Oh, one cool thing. They implemented the Unleash mechanic like they have for Maelstrom for Soul Feast instead
this
of
part
like
down
that
here?
really dumb, the mana consumption thing, which is cool for clear. It's bad for all the builds that used it for single target, but whatever, who cares?
All good. All right, Soul Feast done.
Yeah, it's not really much to talk about there, other than it's Soul Feast.
Do you want to talk about the channeling spell damage over time thing that applies to ailments? Or do you want to talk about Vladimir's Pool from League of Legends?
We can talk about Ghost Flame.
All right, let's go Ghost Flame.
How I like to call my summer car.
Your summer car. So Ghost Flame, to set the stage for this, it has some more damage multipliers on it. It has like Ignite per second, Ignite duration, ailment duration stuff. It has less damage taken baked into it. It has a 40% less damage taken node and a 20% less damage taken node. So it looks like you can be quite tanky.
You get a bunch of armor based on your intelligence as well.
So
really
it deals fire and necrotic spell damage over time while you are channeling. You can make it detach from yourself, and it'll persist after you're done channeling it, which, for what it's worth, I think every channeling skill in every video game should have this. I am such a huge fan of this node.
I agree. I like it.
You can, let's see, what are the other like mechanical differences you can do? It has like some minion interactions.
You can make it, okay, so there's the fun build where
I think I'm about done, but you can make it go into full circle and then you can move.
Yeah.
So if you want to move while channeling, you can get what, 30, 50 movement speed?
Yeah.
That's
the moving
a lot of movement speed.
Is going to be very entertaining.
That's a lot of movement speed.
Like, this is going to be the RF build that people have wanted for so long. This is literally going to be it. Now, you're going to have to deal with your mana, but that's a small price to pay to have a sports card last Epoch.
50 movement speed while dealing damage in a full circle around you.
Wait. You know that meme, like the last Epoch meme where like the devs made the card in the video game, right? We have that now just as a skill. Woohoo.
It's pretty cool. The last thing that I want to call out is we can proc marrow shards twice per second, and then you can increase the frequency from there. And there's also this thing over here that applies decrepify, and it has a screech. So it releases a horrible screech, applies the decrepify buff, and decrepify is a curse that deals physical damage, causes them to take more damage from damage over time effects based on your missing health. So maybe you're an exsanguinous build. That could be interesting.
So
cool. All right, that about covers the details of it. What do you want to talk about? Go ahead.
For the decrepify node that makes it screech, I want to go offline and make a mod that replaces the audio of the screech with like my leg or something. That would be very entertaining. You just hear it every like 1.5 seconds. But
of all the things you could replace it with, you want that?
I mean, there's a few other things. You could do like the Wilhelm scream, like, you know, you can do that.
Sure.
That would work. There's a few things. So Ghost Flame, the reason I like Ghost Flame is it builds upon a lot of the criticism that I've had over channeling skills. And what do I mean by that? If you're gonna fucking stand still to deal your damage, either one, you need to be immortal for the most part.
Which is
Or
bad game
two,
design, in my opinion.
Yeah, which Ghost Flame definitely does. Or two, you need to do damage and actually do something productive. And Ghost Flame does both of those things at once. So what's really cool is it's just a channeling skill that even has Perry excited for. Perry hates channeling skills. Like seriously, like Perry hates channeling skills.
I do. I mean, I think channeling skills are really hard to balance.
But you're excited for Ghost Flame, right?
I think Ghost Flame addresses some of the issues with channeling skills. Like
Yes.
it really does. You can move while channeling, which thank God we finally have a channeling skill in the world of every action RPG ever made that allows you to move as well.
Even at a reduced rate is fine. You can
Yeah.
also do that with,
And then it also persists when you're done casting it. That's
like what? Yeah.
awesome. That's so
Like-
good.
I have a story about that. So like remember the Wandering Spirits thing with the channeling Wandering Spirits?
Mhm.
That build did not reach like S tier quality of like S tier like strength until they made it so that the ghosts started staying after you're done channeling. So this is essentially the same thing, but as Ghost Flame instead.
Yeah, and like you don't have to spec it, but the fact that you have the option
Yeah.
to sounds excellent.
Exactly.
If I were going to play this, the first nodes I would read would be like all this movement speed stuff up here. If you want to stand
Yep.
still and cast stuff, like be my guest, but that's not the kind of game that I want to play.
If you want to juice out as much damage as you possibly want out of Ghost Flame, you are not going to go for the movement speed stuff because mana.
Oh, of
becomes an
course.
issue. But if you want to like use it as kind of like a pseudo clear skill or whatever, it's definitely going to be a skill use. Also, as well, people forget again that Ghost Flame is not just a Warlock skill, it's an Acolyte skill in Warlock's tree that you can grab. So you can play Lich and you can use, of course, the Ghost Flame channel on top of Death Seal, on top of like zooming, right? With 2 movement skills on top of Ghost Flame. You're gonna essentially have 3 different movement skills. You're gonna use Ghost Flame, Transplant, and Reap. And while you are using Ghost Flame, you're also going to have Death Seal going off. So the build that I played, the
wrong warp
Crit
one?
Lich, yeah, the wrong warp Crit Lich, is about to get dialed up to 11.
Man, think about that right now. Like you pop your transplant, use like transplant, and then you start channeling Ghost Flame for like because like your movement speed, it probably snapshots, right?
No, I don't think it does.
You don't, I bet it
might.
does.
If it does, that would be hilarious. I think it'd be cool.
You can probably clear a lot of monsters really quickly with
Now,
it.
of course, what I like about it is it's balanced because of the mana cost. If you read the mana cost here, you can tell that like they went a good, like they gave it a good channel cost, in my opinion. That is the perfect channel cost for it to feel usable still while also not sucking. Like it's great. That was such a good idea, like the amount of channel cost. Because we also have ways of manipulating the channel cost. We can get like negative 70% here. We can add channel cost as well if we want to do more things. Like dealing damage in a circle specifically is going to be probably a very very sought after node. A lot of people are going to grab it. Now, something I want to talk about though, that just in general with the new skills that we're seeing is we're finally seeing the design breadth that we've been waiting for last Epoch for a while. And what do I mean by that? If you look and you tab through all the skills, can you tell me something? Like, can you tell what you notice? Just like click through the skills and like, what do they all have in common?
They don't have 9 out of 9 points.
Not that, but that's part of it.
Go on.
So if you click through all of them, if you look at the top, the max roll planner, it allocates all the points. You see how many points are allocated?
Go on.
They have like well over 80 on half of them, right? Or like 60 to 80. That means that you're going to have significantly more choices than you normally would have when it comes to skills like this. Because
okay.
if you look at something like Meteor, like you can bring up Meteor's tree, right? Meteor has like effectively 4 different branches, right? And those branches, they don't interact with each other. That's like the old design per se. Well, this is like the new design where each of the branches can branch off to each other, and there's more points to look around. So, like for instance, instead of like, oh, like there's like one side of the tree that has like 5 points that you can invest to do shrapnel. Shrapnel would be its own thing, like its own thing with like 3 different separate like paths. Like I like that they're pushing the envelope in terms of how many actual allocatable points are in the tree, because it gives them more room to do more fun stuff. Because if you look at Ghost Flame, imagine if you took all the fun stuff in Ghost Flame and tried to shove it in the same framework that Volcanic Orb has. Wouldn't that be terrible? Like it would be terrible. It would be awful, right? Like look at all those paths and how they interact and stuff. Imagine doing that, but like in like the size of the tree that Volcanic Orb has, right? That would be terrible, right? And now we have all these different branching paths that connect with each other for the most part. Each branching path has multiple options while also being their own thing and all being like essentially supported. And that's the best word of it. Every single little node like that like trails off for all these skills, they're supported mini archetypes essentially, right?
I'm going to pull up Chthonic Fissure while you talk about this, because I think this is the perfect example of what you're talking about.
Like for instance, if I want to do a Chthonic Fissure and I want to build around the zombie node, right? There are other nodes in the tree that I can go take that will like support this zombie playstyle, whether it be the Chthonic Fissure stuff or like there's a lot of different ways, right? Or if I want to go the necrotic damage over time route, there's a lot of nodes that support it. We didn't have this before in the older skills. The older skills were you play shrapnel or you don't. You don't just like, you know, or whatever. I'm beating a dead horse with the meteor like thing, but like, let me pull up a different skill. Like, what's a good example here? Fireball. Fireball's a very good example of this, where like it has a bunch of things it's trying to do, but not much support for what it's actually trying to do with any of those, right? Like you can do the homing and stuff, you can do the multiple projectiles, or you can do the channeling, and that's it. And like those are really like, I don't know, very
pretty
narrow
exclusive
paths. Yeah, like you can't really combine them. Well, Chthonic Fissure, you can do because what's really cool is if you pay attention to Acid Skin, it says chance to be critically struck by any hit, right? Now, Chthonic Fissure can summon zombies. This is the first time in recorded last Epoch history that we will be able to play a spell crit zombie build that actually can cap its crit chance. Thanks to this node.
That's a pretty good point.
You can play a zombie build where you just plop down Chthonic Fissure, right?
You're gonna play a minion build.
Come out.
You're gonna play a minion build that isn't a necromancer, doesn't get judged.
Exactly. This is good enough that you could potentially do it. Now, of course, what's really cool about this isn't just for that, right? Imagine if you had a friend that was a zombie build.
Sorry, what was that?
Necromancer. If you had a friend, I know, right? If you had like someone with you that was a zombie build, and you put down a Chthonic Fissure with the crit on it, all of a sudden their build gets an immense buff. Like Chthonic Fissure is also not only this powerhouse of a skill, right? It's also a support skill. Look at that.
Pretty hot. It's pretty hot.
Like you like support lock or support necro, well, support lock specifically, is going to be a build. And unlike support necro, which was butchered and removed from the game, sadly, support lock will actually be a support build.
Is that a new skill? Summon friend. We have
Yeah.
one more skill to talk about, and then we're going to talk about the mastery here. And then we'll have like, we'll share like 2 minutes of opinions about Falconer at the very end. So let's talk about this. This is a skill called the Profane Veil.
Yep.
It looks identical to Vladimir from League of Legends using his Sanguine Pool thing. If you're a League of Legends player, I'm sorry, but some of us
the
were.
idea with Profane Veil is you can channel it, and while you're channeling it, you have 100% chance, hard-coded, 100% chance to dodge every hit. You can still take dot damage and stuff, right?
Yes.
But you can dodge every single hit, and it lasts for a few seconds, and it is an absolute defensive powerhouse. Like, I think a good example is that one skill in Necromancer for Diablo 4. I can't remember the exact name, but like people who play Diablo 4 will know it's like the Necromancer skill. It's the one that like makes you immune to damage, and it's exactly like this. I can't remember the exact name. You can talk about something while I find this.
Sure. So Rebuke is better. Rebuke is just different. This thing lets you move. So Profane Veil, let's talk about the mechanics of it before we get back to Dread's example. But Profane Veil, you can move while it's being cast. You can take no hit damage, so you can like puddle under something. You can release some profane orbs, and they can like hit things. They can be a source of damage for you. It looks like they have scaling as well, so maybe a profane orb build could be cool. You can have a second Profane Veil puddle that appears. You can have one appear next to you, or you could have one appear away from you, like where your cursor is. You can proc Bone Curse. There's some minion stuff going on down here. We'll talk about this. Like you can consume your own minions and then gain buffs from consuming your own minions. Let's see. There's cleanse. There's synergy with wandering spirits, which I think is pretty cool.
Yep.
And then we have a kind of a generic note over here. Where is it? This one. You deal more global damage to cursed enemies while you are in Profane Veil. So
Which normally is very short, but you can fix that.
Yeah, so the only thing that I want to highlight about Scorn is every time that we've seen this kind of effect before in Last Epoch, it is weird because it's snapshots. Damage snapshots, like your stats when it starts. So think about something like Warpath gives you more spell damage while you are spinning. The more spell damage while you're spinning, but it only happens if the spell damage occurs while you are already spinning, which means you have to proc it so that it only happens with a Holy Flame Burst proc, or it happens with like procking Smite. So this node with Scorn probably only benefits curses that are applied while you are puddling, or profane orbs that you create while you're puddling. So I mean,
you could do like instant cast Wandering Spears, then that would deal more damage to cursed enemies while in Profane Veil because you can
that would hit the conditions as well.
There's a few different things. Or if like you have a volatile zombie cast an Infernal Shade for you.
There's a lot of those kinds of situations. The last two things I want to call out before I hand it back to Dread is talking about this node, which technically exists. It says
Propane Form. Oh my god.
So it says it inflicts penance, which causes enemies to take fire damage when they hit a target, and penance deals more damage per percentage of damage reflected. So if you like playing damage reflect, seek help or take this node or something, but I don't know. Then we also have some fire.
What I like about Penitent Tangent, okay? The reason I like it so much.
Penitent Tangent. Yeah. Okay, it's a good tangent.
Because it's spell damage. It scales up as spell damage.
It does.
What's really cool about that is it means that if you're trying to play a stupid reflect build, right? You can actually scale just spell damage and make the reflect damage do enough damage to clear and use a different spell for single target, right? I like that.
Okay.
You have played Reflect Spriggan before, and let me tell you, it's terrible.
The title of that YouTube video was my least favorite build ever played.
It's awful, and this gives you an out because you can actually scale the same kind of damage that you're doing with penance. Oh god. All right, you can continue now.
And then we have some fire stuff over here. The fire stuff I think is cool. It's like you puddle under a group of enemies, And when you first damage an enemy with Profane Veil, you have a chance, up to 100% chance, to cast Infernal Shade on them. And then the Infernal Shade deals damage in AoE, or you make it explode or something. And that seems like a pretty good way of clearing a bunch of monsters. So I don't know exactly what to make of Profane Veil. Obviously, it's very good defensively, but is this going to be in every build? Is this going to be something that appears in half the builds? Like, are people going to like it? Does it move fast enough? Am I going to be dumb for not putting it in my build? We'll see. I don't know exactly how to.
For me, my opinion on it is, if you are pushing really high corruption, or if you are trying to do really high arena with Warlock, Profane Veil is going to just be a mandatory skill.
Oh, you're like a Profane Veil plus Ghost Flame build at that point, aren't you? If you care about defenses, you care about those two skills.
Yeah, exactly. And that's going to be what you focus on. Definitely. Now, Profane Veil as a utility skill outside of the defensive mechanics, I think it's going to be fine. It's cool, it's great. It's just kind of niche per se, right? Like, there's a lot of cool things you can do with it and trigger off of it and make it work. Like, for instance, the node that saves the entire tree, by the way, in my opinion, Profane Veil as a skill
is the Profane Orbs.
No, it's not. I think those are bad. But Vampiric Pool here, which makes it so you can consume minions and get additional duration. So it says flat duration, right?
Yeah.
Now, Reimer's here, so he can, tell us technically.
So this gives you plus 5 seconds.
This percent duration that I'm looking at on the tree, right? This 50% you can get. Does that apply to the flat duration that you get for consuming minions? Because you can get a lot more duration this way. Now, of course, the problem with Profane Veil is its cooldown does not recover during its use, so you will always have downtime no matter what you do.
Good. Otherwise, you would literally dodge every single hit.
It would be stupid. Good. Yeah, it would be stupid, obviously. You have nodes like Stream of Profanity, so you can just yell curses at the opponent until it's off cooldown, right? And yeah, I think that it's going to be a really strong skill in general. It just it does so many different things that we kind of just have to play with it per se.
You summon volatile zombies when you exit Profane Veil equal to a number of your minions consumed, so up to 10. Volatile zombies summoned this way deal more damage in a large area per intelligence. 4% more damage per intelligence.
So the question is, if I add flat duration with duration extension, is that applied by the percent duration? I don't think it is, right? Because
I doubt duration.
It is. Yeah,
that'd be very weird.
Because if that's the case, then the max amount of time that you could spend in Profane Veil would be about 5.5-ish seconds. Yeah, it's added after. So the max you can be in Profane Veil is 5.5 seconds. So you are not going to be using this for single target at all. You could never use this for single target. But what you can do is use it for your clear, utilizing one of the main ways, like with the Infernal Shade thing, with the Penitence thing, right? You can use it for clear at the very least, right? That would be cool, I think. You can definitely do that. Yeah. Yeah, you can definitely do that at the very least.
I'm excited to play with it. This is the one skill that is above the halfway point. So Profane Veil, and then, of course, the Mastery skill, Chthonic Fissure, are the two things that you need to be a Warlock in order to use. It looks like the rest of them, so Ghost Flame, Soul Feast, and Chaos Bolt are all things that you can access as a Necromancer or a Lich.
No, Soul Feast is at the top. No, Soul Feast
at the top? Oops.
Yep.
Okay.
Soul Feast Warlock only. So one cool note in Profane form, Profane Veil that
got it.
Is Propane form. I think it's really funny. So what's really cool with this node is
which one?
You can get a bunch of movement speed, Propane form.
Is there really a node called Profane form?
Yes, it is. It's called Propane.
Oh my God, it's called Propane form.
Okay, so when I first saw this, node, you know what I instantly thought of? I thought of King of the Hill instantly when I saw that node. It's
you move faster equal to a portion of your chance to ignite on hit up to a maximum, but Profane Veil is a shorter duration per chance to ignite on hit. up to a maximum. So like you can get 200 movement speed for a very small duration.
There is a very niche interaction with this that I will talk about here.
Go on.
Okay. So let's say that you do this and you get all the movement speed. You get as much movement speed as possible. Now, when you're using Profane form, you're only or Profane Veil or whatever. Oh my goodness. You're going to use it and the duration is going to be really short. So it's going to suck, right? It's going to suck. But what you can do is you can use the weapon Wrong Warp, okay? That gives you 3% increased spell damage per 1% movement speed. So this can snapshot you for like well over 600% spell damage. Now, of course, what you could also do is when you're inside Profane Veil, if it can last like a second at least, right? You can cast Wandering Spirits, right? While you have that percent damage.
Right? And it probably snapshots.
It's an instant cast. I think it does. Now, I'm not entirely sure, but I think it does. And you can get the gigantic amount of spell damage from Profane Veil. Well, also you can use Drain Life channel to, of course, make them stay indefinitely until you have more.
You can.
Up. Yeah. So you can do some really funky shenanigans with this node. Now, of course, that all relies Wandering Spirits to snapshot when it casts. I have to go test that, obviously, but still. This would lead to a very amusing skill.
That's adorable. I like it.
You can't use Wrong Warp for its normal usage because Profane Veil gains the traversal tag, and the way that this works is the skill that is the higher cooldown or whatever. Like the skill that you use is the cooldown that is placed on all your other traversal skills. So you end up giving your traversal skills like a 10-second cooldown constantly. So it would suck for the normal usage of Wrong Warp, but it would be great for this stupid idea.
Sounds totally adorable. I love it. All right, so we talked about 4.5 skills because we kind of skipped over Soul Feast because who cares?
Yeah.
I'm going to scroll back up to the top of this max roll page, and they have the Warlock passive tree, and we're just going to chit chat about this and make sure that everyone knows what's going on, and then we can share our opinions on it.
All right, let's tell everyone what the overloads do because it's one of the biggest questions.
Okay, let's go like this. We're going to start with overload.
I can explain the first
let's talk about overloads, and then we'll talk about the top nodes, like the keystone node at the very top, and then we'll work our way from the bottom to the top. So tell me what's an overload.
Is the bleed overload, and you can trigger it with what it shows on screen. But essentially, it gives you 20% more bleed damage to enemies that are either moving or enemy or boss and rare enemies, which is really cool because the boots have the same affix, but they don't have against like enemy and against rare enemies and stuff, which kind of makes those boots a little bit less good, but they don't really need to be good because they're really strong. But still 20% more damage against moving enemies. Great, right? That's really good for bleed builds. And remember, this can be accessed as a Lich or a Necromancer because it's on the bottom half. The next one, Vile Tide, the poison overload, it makes it so you get up to negative 400% poison resistance on the enemy based on the amount of poisons they have. Now, of course, you have to put a lot of poisons on them, but that's easy. Now, that essentially makes poison back into what it was before all of the nerfs and gutting, which is kind of funny. Poison Witch might be back thanks to poison overload. We'll see. Then the next overload is Damned Overload. Now, Damned Overload is interesting. When you trigger it, you deal more damn damage with the ailment based on your missing life and the enemy's missing life. So both, right? I don't know if they're multiplicative with each other, but you get like up to like 20% more or something like that. It's something crazy. That's really good for a damned low life build, right? Ignite Overload, what it does is it gives you 1% more global fire damage per 20% global ignite chance, meaning that if you're playing like a fire crit build or a fire spell damage over time build, or of course a fire ignite build, you can get more damage. What I like about this node is it works for crit, damage over time spell, and ignite at the same time because it's global more fire damage. So this makes crit fire lich a possibility in theory, right? And
Not Lich because it's above the halfway point.
I mean, I'm sorry, Warlock.
Warlock,
I'm sorry.
yeah, gotcha.
I'm mixed. And I think that's it for the overloads. Yeah, that's it for the overloads.
Okay, so, and then of course, there's the payoff for having as many of them as possible. There's a more damage over time per overload. So you can spec into this as well. So if you have all 4, then you have 12% more damage over time. Each of these nodes that Dred just covered has a accompanying node that gives it some extra juice. If you're watching here live in Twitch chat, Kilvar just posted that second link there is something that you can browse through to see exactly what the wording is on each of those overloads. For the Fizz one, specking past it also lets you cast Rip Blood once per second automatically, which is very cool.
Which is really good, especially for Lich, by the way.
The Poison one has this bonus that I'm showing here on the screen. It says, while you have Poison Overload, if you use a potion, your poison spread from one enemy to up to 2 other nearby enemies, which is OPOP when it comes to clear speed.
I think it's bad. I think that's garbage. I'm sorry. I think it's garbage. Anything potion related is garbage. Sadly, just like
I disagree.
It's just bad.
The poison one. Sorry, the dam one. Sorry, the dam one. While you have dam overload, you have a chance to chain chain nearby damned enemies to the ground. It just immobilizes them, but then there's also some dam duration that goes along with this node. And then the ignite one says, while you have ignite overload and you kill an ignite enemy, you cast flame whip at a nearby enemy. I doubt flame whip itself is going to be something that you end up scaling, but it is some cool stuff, like additional hits.
Like when you hit an ignited enemy, you get an extra hit.
Yeah.
So like,
and it applies your global really ignite chance.
The reason why this is good is because it scales ignite overload. So if you're playing like a crit hit fire build, like crit fire hungering souls, right? In this case, as you hit the enemy, you'll apply more ignites with the flame whips, which of course give you more passive, more fire damage. So like this node will be good for that. But for other purposes, it'll be like meh, I think. But it's cool nonetheless. I think it's cool. I've seen the animation. I think it looks sick. It's just kind of sad that it doesn't have the same scaling. But one more important thing about the overloads.
Oh, this one?
Yes.
Okay, so we're segueing perfectly into the next topic.
Wait. So the overloads, you can only trigger them once every 12 seconds.
Yes.
So if you
have one already,
you cannot trigger it until it's over, which makes the poison explosion one, because I made a mistake because I thought that they would have no cooldown. Silly me. But the Defiling Nova, which applies like your poison chance to 500%, right, would have been really cool to spam with Vile Tide, but never mind, I guess.
So we have one more like advanced mechanic or skill that's baked into the mastery, and it's this Witchfire thing. To give you some context, Witchfire is a ailment.
There's 300
Is it an ailment or is it a spell? I forget. It's an ailment. It's an ailment.
It's 300 necrotic and 300 fire damage over 12 seconds.
So it's 600 damage total. The other thing to compare this to is Doom. Doom is like an ailment that applies a bunch of damage.
Witchfire is actually good.
Doom does 400 damage and it stacks 4 times. Witchfire has 600 damage, but it only stacks once. On the other hand, Witchfire has a tremendously large more damage multiplier baked into it. My opinion before we go into this is that Witchfire is going to be a clear speed thing, not whatever Dred tells you it is. On the other hand, Dred feels differently.
That's literally what I said.
That's what I said. Yeah. Look at the more damage multiplier is huge. Huge on this
clear trash. That's the whole point of it. Yeah. And you use like Ignite Hungering Souls for single target.
My mistake.
Yeah, that's my plan.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So what you're going to do is you're going to take skills that don't trigger the overloads. You're going to apply a bunch of dams and ignites, right? And then you're going to cast a fire or necrotic skill to trigger the Witchfire, and it'll apply to a bunch of enemies, and then you can spread it across. And then you're going to swap to the other kind of skill, whether it be ignite or necrotic, and then apply Witchfire the next pack, and then you'll have a 6-second cooldown for Witchfire application instead of an absolutely outrageous 12-second cooldown, which means you can actually make Witchfire work for you, which is great. And there's a lot of synergy when it comes to these kind of things. Like Witchfire is definitely going to make a very fun build. Now it's going to be a lot of button pressing, and most people who play Last Epoch these days don't like pressing buttons.
Gross.
So yeah, so definitely won't be good in that crowd, but it'll be good for me because I'll really enjoy it. And the reason why I love this parry is with the 300 flat damage, like base on each type,
Yeah.
right? And then we have, the more Witchfire damage here. Imagine when you get this in the campaign.
Oh, it's gonna dumpster
models.
every monster in campaign.
It's gonna be one of the best things ever.
Yeah, it's gonna absolutely crush early game.
And I think this is a cool way of taking a passive and making it into an entire build. I think they did a really good job on this one specifically.
Cool.
Yeah.
You know what?
Other than my gripes with Overload.
That's got me excited. So the next thing I want to do, other than the Overload stuff, because that kind of ties the room together here, like Witchfire as well, we have the 3 nodes at the very top. I always feel like the 3 nodes at the top are important for understanding what you're building toward in a mastery. So we're going to do the same thing with Falconer someday when that's available. But let's take a look at these 3 top nodes and see what is going on. First is Aspect of Death. We have increased health. Cool. It's a 5 out of 5 node. It also says more damage per negative ailment on you up to a cap of 90. I assume this means a cap of 90 ailments on you. So I think that this caps out at 45% more damage if you have 90 negative ailments on you, which is a lot of negative ailments on you. Normally, I like to cleanse negative ailments on me. I like to have cleanse on my belt and then use a potion to cleanse everything. Maybe I'm not doing that in order to get 45% more damage. We'll see. And then we have a 3-point bonus here, which is kind of like a mini Marina's Lost Soul, Marina's Wand, but it, of course, stacks with Marina's Wand. So Marina's Wand is something that should be on your radar. It says you inflict damage on yourself when you or your minions kill a target or take a hit. So what are your thoughts on this?
So this node's going to obviously be very strong. There are a few ways of cheesing this. There's a very easy way of getting a bunch of ailments, whether that be through Bleeding Heart or the belt. You use Bleeding Heart and the belt that can cover half of them. And then you can also use Aura of Decay for a few of them, right? And you can scale your poison chance to apply more poisons to yourself for this node. So there's a lot of different ways of utilizing this node, but sadly, I think for the most part, it's going to be relegated to the I one-tap T4 Jurla video and not for actual builds, because, applying a bunch of, ailments to yourself is definitely not an easy task, but thankfully Acolyte has the tools to do so. But I think it's literally going to be I built a glass cannon, ha ha ha, look how I killed this boss for fun, and then moving on. I think it's a great node. I think it's more of a meme node though.
I want to compliment EHG. There's one thing that I really like about this node. I said it yesterday on stream, but I'm going to say it right now as well. This is a 5 out of 5 node, and I think that there's good reason. I think it's defensible to put 2 points in it so that you don't get the 3-point bonus. I think it's also defensible to put 3 or 4 or 5 points in this.
Yeah.
That's really unique. That's a really well-made node. How many negative ailments do I want to myself? Do I want I guess 4 points is probably dumb. If you have 3 points, you're probably doing 5 points, but you could do 2 points or 3 points or 5 points. I like it. What a negative threshold? What if you put only 2 points in it so you don't get the negative threshold? That's exciting.
Yeah,
we need negative
with a really
thresholds.
Nice buff on the top, increased health's great, by the way.
Yeah, it is absolutely.
So what's really cool with this node in general is it promotes a way of playing with AOD, where you turn on AOD and you take the node that gives you the infinite, it makes a bunch of poisons on you and it scales over time or whatever. And you can essentially turn it on and off, and you can just not scale poison damage directly with damage over time, and make sure you don't scale it much, and then just have very small poisons on you while getting the more benefit damage you get with crits or whatever. That's going to be really cool, I think. This node will be cool. I think it's really cool. I think it's a cool node. I think
node. The node that is cool.
Yeah,
node cooler.
It's hard to go farther than that because, it's gonna be great. It's
All
just
right,
like
let's move on.
it's really just gonna just be like every single warlock's gonna take it no matter what.
You think so?
And they're all just gonna take it, whether or not they can scale it properly or not. They're just gonna take it because it says more damage on it.
You don't
Like,
think anyone's gonna put 2 points in it?
no, I think they're gonna go full hardcore on this thing and just put the 5 points in. Especially if you're like a Twisted Heart build. 15% increased health is a lot, man.
The next node here is called a Cursed Seer. There's a couple synergies that we're going to call out in a second, but let's read it first. It's got cast speed, and then it also has increased cast speed for curses. As a 3-point bonus, so it's a 5 out of 5. 3 points put in this, you go, when damage leaves you below 35% health, you cleanse all of the curses on you and on enemies, and you gain ward per curse cleansed. So it's 100 per curse cleansed. That's potentially a ton of ward that you're gaining.
Yep.
Yeah, you could have like, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 curses realistically. Yeah, if you're going ham, maybe 9 curses or something. You know, like 5 curses on each enemy around you. Like if there's 5 enemies around you, it's 2,500 ward right there. And it scales off other things. Like it's a
terrible
cool
for
thing.
Bosses, amazing for clear.
The fact that it's cast speed and cast speed for curses means that something like Spirit Plague, which is a curse and also a spell, gains 45% cast speed off of this. And that's kind of cool. So some things are going to double dip on this. There's also a node in Profane Veil called Profane Orb that scales off of curse cast speed.
Cast speed of,
Exactly. So this node here, right, increases the frequency of Profane Orb per cast speed for curses you have. So it's kind of a tailor-made synergy.
This node is going to work is, you know, that node in Sorcerer or Mage that like gives you a boost of ward based on your HP when you take enough damage, right? Reactive ward. It's going to essentially be reactive ward, but for Warlock.
I don't mind it.
It's going to be a lot of defensive. And since you don't have to put on stupid Death Seal, you can actually have ward. Woo!
That's true. Yeah, for all the people who want to play like ward-based Lich builds, you're gonna love Warlock because like we already have low life
Warlock
synergy.
instead. Exactly.
True.
That's another thing that's gonna be great. We no longer have to deal with the like tyranny of Death Seal anymore.
The last node here, let's read both of these. So we have when you directly cast a curse, you also inflict a number of enemies with anguish. And then up here we have spell damage for curses. So this Dustbringer node, it's 18 spell damage for curses. There's a handful of curses in the game. There's the 5 new ones that they just introduced, along with a smattering of other ones. There's maybe 6 or 7 or 8 maybe that you care about. We also have a node at the very bottom that gives another 18 spell damage for curses. So curses are a spell damage over time, and some of them are fire, some of them are necrotic, or some of them are poison spell damage over time. But you could just be a generic spell damage over time curse build with nodes like these, and that could be pretty cool. Of course, the 3-point bonus, this is 6 out of 6, but the 3-point bonus is hitting a boss or rare enemy now also triggers the damage from Anguish. And then Anguish is, let's see, deals necrotic damage to all enemies inflicted by it whenever I kill an enemy. So this just makes it happen on hit against bosses. It's cool. I like it. I think this is support for an archetype that already looks to be like pretty self-contained, pretty self-explanatory. Just click on everything that introduces a new curse into your build, and then curses do a smattering of other things for you. It's like a curses matter theme, and then you just scale the damage for the curses. Seems like a build. Seems
like,
good.
So the idea is like you can do the penitence from Profane Orb, and as of course your penitence procs kills things, of course Anguish will of course proc those as well, like on those kills. So it'll make clearing very easy for this kind of build, which is cool. It'll be fun. The only problem is they have to attack and hit you for penitence, or for the specific curse, which means you might have to run a bunch of like dummy minions where you just like you run like a cycle to like get them to like or some you end up doing something.
No, that sounds like a really fun build. Tell me more about it.
Tell me more about it. I'm not entirely sure. I think what you can do is you can do the skeleton stuff. You can do the skeleton resummon chance, and then you grab the node inside. You grab the node, the 40%. Then use the Synathia set since you're playing a curse build, anyways, right? The Synathia shield specifically states here, 20% chance when one of your skeletons dies, resummon a new one. So you have 60% chance to resummon a new skeleton, right? And then as, of course, enemies hit those skeletons, they'll die, and then the skeletons will die eventually because you're playing a warlock, not a necromancer.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, like they'll resummon themselves. So you only have to cast them every so often.
There's so many builds in this game, and there's so many things that I want to play, and it makes me happy that none of them are what you just described.
There's gonna be someone that wants to play it, so like
good, and I'm glad that somebody wants to play it.
Like
it ain't me,
like
coach.
That's like the thing is like someone's gonna want to play this, so I'm gonna also Jesus Christ, Doom Herald. By the way, have you seen Doom Herald?
No, what's Doom Herald? I was gonna talk about the rest of the mastery, but what's
Doom Herald? Is the node that gives you 24% less damage taken while channeling and 25% more damage to damned enemies while channeling.
Oh, it sounds busted.
Like that Wandering Spirits build I played. Yeah. What if I just had 24% more damage?
You take less damage while channeling, and you deal more damage to damned enemies while channeling. Sounds.
Yeah, I totally didn't need that at all.
Why? With 24% more damage for channeling builds? What? That's nuts.
Yeah, it's stupid. I'm surprised it's even
Ghost Flame. What the fuck?
I think if it said 10% per, I think it'd be balanced.
Why does Ghost Flame look so good all of a sudden?
I mean, Ghost Flame is going to be good because they realize that channeling needs this ridiculous amount of investment to make it work. So that's what they did.
All right, so I'm gonna call out a couple nodes here that I like. I like all the defensive nodes because I like not dying. We have more armor per curse on the target. We estimate like 5 or 6 curses in your build. Yeah, but I'm saying like 5 in general when I'm doing my napkin
5 is
math.
a good average. Yeah.
So more armor per curse on the target. Less damage taken per curse on the target, less damage taken from withered enemies, and then we have haste stuff up here at the top. So those are the nodes that really stand out to me the most. Of course, every node here is a banger, but those are the ones that stand out to me. Which nodes do you want to chat about?
Let me see here. Which nodes would I want to take first?
This node? What about Malefic Body?
I like Imperishable. I really love Imperishable. I have been playing I have been playing a bunch of different builds that have accidentally had like Ward Decay Threshold on it. And it's a lot stronger than I thought it was in the beginning when it first was like released. Now, this has a lot of synergy, this specific node, because spoilers, you can get a lot of necrotic resistance as an acolyte. And this will scale with Bone Clamor Barbroot as well, right?
The helmet.
You're going to end up with a very just large amount of just ward
per second and ward decay threshold. And you don't need to do anything in particular to make that happen because your mastery passive for being a warlock is a bunch of necrotic res, and there's necrotic res in your mastery, and there's necrotic res. And maybe some base types, there's necrotic res in the acolyte, and without going really much out of your way, you're going to have a chunk of ward per second, a chunk of
so you can play.
Ward
this would be on the Chthonic fissure build that gives more damage per necrotic res.
I've already got people in my Twitch chat who are excited about playing like a necrotic res build, like necrotic res, stack it up as high as possible, and then just grab all the different payoffs for it. It kind of reminds me of like intelligence for Runemaster. Runemaster's intelligence did cooldown and cast speed and flat damage and this and that. Like it did like 7 different things, and like all of a sudden, necrotic res is kind of looking like a really nice stat. I've never ever wanted a tier 7 resistance on any build. In fact, I made an entire video talking about like, what are
you talking about? There's that Ignite Black Hole build.
There sure is.
It does like a billion damage when you sack fire res and have no defense.
I made a video talking about like what if exalted resistance modifiers had hybrid stats on them. So like tier 4 fire res does this, tier 5 fire res, but then tier 6 if it's exalted, what if it also gave like less fire damage taken? That'd be a way to make exalted stuff more interesting.
That would be cool, actually. That would introduce a way.
It's an idea that I hope EHG steals from me.
So essentially the idea here, it would be much like max res stacking, but without actually max res stacking.
Obviously. That's like what my idea was roughly getting at. But what EHG has done here is like they made necrotic res and like tier 7 necrotic res. It's just a bigger number. It's kind of boring, but they made it matter in the context of Warlock because all of a sudden it has alternate scaling to give you damage, to give you ward to get threshold, ward per second. Like it does other stuff. And like you could just build around necrotic threshold. And I think that's really exciting.
I agree.
Or necrotic resistance, whatever it's called.
And we have a bunch of it by being an acolyte, so
sick. Man, Warlock's mastery passive. It's not listed here, which is kind of it's kind of criminal if you think about it.
I have no idea how that got passed.
So Warlock's mastery passive, like you click on it, you get Chthonic Fissure, but you also get 35 fire res, 35 necrotic res. When you're level 15,
you also get 5% more damage per curse on the enemy.
You sure do, baby.
Yes. Who said that was okay?
No, that's great. Okay, that's so good.
What do you mean it's great and so good? All right, do me a favor, Perry. Go look at Forge Guard's mastery bonus and you tell me that. Okay.
Forge Guard gives fire and physical resistance, which is a holdover from the old system of giving you protections, and it also gives armor for each hit you've received
1% armor for like 10 seconds. Percent, not more, percent. Right? Well, Warlock
it's old. Give it a break. You're like beating up a geezer.
What do you mean? Rune Master has 30% increased elemental damage and 10% increased cast speed with elemental spells. What do you mean old? This is new.
Well, cast speed is
I know.
I like cast speed.
5% more damage per curse is kind of really good.
It is kind of really good.
The only thing that is remotely similar is like Void Knight's chance to echo by far. That is the only one that's like remotely similar in terms of how much power it gives.
What I was trying to highlight is the necrotic and the fire resistance that you get at level 15 is really relevant for that part of the storyline. Because I meant to say that for a new player, if you're a brand new gamer out there who just wants to pick up Last Epoch for the first time, what's a new class? What can I play? Play Warlock. Give it a shot. You're going to be trying out something new while everybody else is trying out something new, which is fun. You're going to play Chthonic Fissure as soon as you get it, and it looks to be a very strong leveling skill and very simple to scale because it scales in a number of different ways. I think you're really going to like it. And the resistances that you get for speccing Warlock at level 15 or so, it's going to give you relevant resistances, a good chunk of them that are immediately making the game easier for you. So I think Warlock's going to be like very beginner friendly.
Yeah, we actually calculated that Raven Crow on average without too much investment. Most builds on Warlock at least will get like 5 curses because like specifically Chthonic Fissure covers 3, while like you can do like Spirit Plague on Spect or Bone Curse on Spect or whatever, right? Like there's actually a lot of synergy in just stacking a bunch of curses.
Good stuff. That about covers it for Warlock.
Oh boy,
there's so much we could say.
The Falconer bashing session.
So
let's go.
We've been talking for 1 hour and 20 minutes. We're gonna spend 2 minutes.
10 minutes.
2, 1. We're gonna spend
minutes.
1 minute, a minute and a half, talking about Falconer. We're not going to read every single note. We're not going to read every single note.
All you got to read is Sharpest Point and not Sharpest Point. I'm sorry, wrong one. Expert Duelist. Just read Expert Duelist. That's all you need to do. All you need to do. Just it's like, what is that node and why is it so bad? Okay, all right. Most builds.
Expert.
So you can get 100 decks on a normal build. That's 10 flat damage. You know how much base damage an actual spear has?
The whole point of a spear is that it has a bunch of flat damage. Why do I put 100 decks and then I get 10 more?
The other one at the top, right? The increased melee attack speed with a two-handed sword, that's 10%. Literally Forge Guard, one of the worst masteries in the entire game, has like 40% at the top of the tree. Like, what? Like, okay. The fire penetration per int with a staff, like...
there's going to be a unique staff that comes out that supports fire cinder strike.
And then we look at the spear node. right?
That's one,
The
yeah,
spear
yeah.
node, the bleed chance with a spear and all
Mhm.
that. We get increased attack speed with a spear and the puncture range.
Mhm.
That puncture range thing should just be inbuilt with this skill. If I'm using a spear, my pokey skill should be longer, which it is, but not really, right? Like, I think that should just be like, that would make melee puncture not a complete joke.
Okay. So Falconer, Dread and I agree on this. So I'm gonna speak for you, Dread, just
Yeah, go
to
ahead.
summarize
Go ahead.
this and start ending the podcast here. Falconer's offensive nodes do not seem particularly interesting.
You are going to be a ZDPS tank when you're playing.
Well, it's like there's percent increased damage here, percent increased damage there, percent increased. Like there's a couple things that are fine, but I don't know where the juice is yet when it comes to Falconer. On the other hand, the defensive nodes look great. There's like armor here, less damage taken, armor per dexterity, armor does this, leech thing there. Like there's a lot of good looking defenses, including
so what really
even block
annoyed,
and glancing blow.
What makes me annoyed is fencing grace, the node that gives you block effectiveness per dex. Why isn't this like a Forge Guard node? Why is this all the way here in Falconer? We have the entire Sentinel class starving for defenses because like squishy Sentinel, and then like Falconer, a completely random like mastery, right? That's minion based, has this node of all nodes. Like, I would love this node on any build. What the heck?
So that's about it for Falconer. There's two special nodes that I'm gonna call out. One is it looks like ballistas are cool because they have a lot of flat damage and now they have +5 base critical strike chance. So like maybe there's a ballista thing going on here with like some like minion crit multi. Because like the Falcon is scaling off of minion damage and the ballistas are already minions scaling off of minion damage. So maybe there's like a Falcon or just a ballista thing that you can do. And the other node that I want to call out is this node, which I love. I love this node. I want to read it to you. Dread, have you read this node? Pretend like you haven't. Pretend like you haven't.
Oh, the Silver Shroud thing?
Pretend like you haven't read this node. I want to read it to you.
I'll pretend I haven't. Yes.
All right. What does this node do? When you use a certain ability on your certain skill bar, you gain a certain amount of Silver Shrouds. This effect is a 10-second cooldown. So you put points into this from 0 to 5. Depending on how many points you put into this, determines whether you click Q, W, E, R, or right click.
Well, you obviously put it on your smoke bomb button, so you double stack the Silver Shrouds. Obviously, ooh.
And like, if you disregard the left to right scaling, it's 30 divided by 5, which is 6, right? It's six flat health per point, which is pretty bad. It's not a particularly good node. So if you are rebinding your keyboard, you gain skill points.
That is
there. You gain skill points by rebinding your keyboard. To put this wherever you want it, unless Q is where you want it.
Like,
yeah, who designed this? What?
I think it's a cool idea, but it's like, I don't know. After looking at Warlock and Rune Master and all that, looking at Falconer's tree, just I'm gonna be upfront here. I have an insane bias against like Rogue in general. I hate the current balance of Rogue due to a lot of different, equally as atrocious contributing factors. Okay, and not limited to the skills and how they're balanced, and how it's either feast or famine, how glancing blow gives you no defense against damage over time, which is the thing that actually gets you killed, unlike hits, and like just so many other problems. But I am not a very big fan of Rogue. So when I see this, I even less of a big fan of Rogue. Now, of course, some other people are going to absolutely love this, right? But I am.
We don't know the skills. We don't know what the Falcon does. We don't know the items. We don't know the uniques. We don't know the idols. We don't know the like. There's a lot of stuff we don't know. I don't see things here that excite me yet. Nothing here excites me yet.
It just reminds me of the Forge Guard tree, where
Yeah,
it's
it kind of
trying to
does.
do
Just kind of boring.
20,000 different things. It's like
Mm.
someone was like, wouldn't it be cool if we had a speeder node?
Mm.
Wouldn't it be cool
Mm.
if we had like a node that gives you fire pen
Mm.
with the staff for my
Mm.
random intelligence stacking rogue? I mean, like the person who designed Warlock and the person who designed Falconer are two completely different people. I can tell you that right now. Like, I like whoever designed Warlock.
Yeah.
I think I like that. Like, whoever designed Falconer, it's like, yeah. And like, my problem is, okay, why would you ever play this other than the Falconer thing, right? Other than the Falcon thing, right? Why would you play this over Blade Dancer?
Well, it's because you get access to Falcon Strikes and Dive Bomb.
I meant other than Falcon. Why would you play this other than, like?
Oh,
it's
you
the
get access.
sorcerer problem.
You get access to traps.
I mean, sure, but is that going to be better than Umbra Blades?
Listen, as long as there's a Falconer build that allows me to continue playing the only rogue build I've ever played, Shadow Daggers, I'll be happy.
Yeah.
All I is like, as long as there's a Shadow Dagger Falconer, I will instantly know what to play, and I will never experiment with anything else.
Here is Falconer might actually be really good for like Umbra Blades in general and Shadow Daggers, not because it provides any actual like
because it has defense.
Like it has all the defense in the world, and since Shadow Dagger has infinite amounts of damage for some reason, right? Then like, well, I might as well be a Falconer so I don't die. But the problem is you're still going to die to damage over time, so it doesn't matter.
No, but you're not going to die to damage over time because your Falcon's going to be leeching damage to you per point of dexterity.
Yeah, because that 2k life pool you have is going to defend against like the what are they called? The Ignite Burbs. The Raiders. The
Raiders. Sure. Yeah, I forget the names.
You're assuming that their ignites don't take you from 2k to 0 in one tick. You're assuming that that's not the case, which that is very much so the case.
I like Twitch chat. Just let the bird apply Shadow Daggers. Yep. Listen, if that's a build, I'll play it. Sounds great.
Hey, Reimer, I'm teasing. Okay, it's not serious. It's a joke. I'm just saying that I like the design of Warlock over the design of Falconer. Okay, and since they're being released at the same time, I'm going to make the comparison. That's what
I do like this. Yeah. There's a number of things here that give you endurance threshold if you have not been hit recently. There's like a nice synergy between like dodge and glancing blow. Or like dodge, you get like this endurance threshold stuff. We saw like there's a change to defenses with like the mind over matter stuff, which is to say damage taken from mana before health. And then like they started introducing other sources of like endurance threshold, and it seems to be like endurance threshold if you have not been hit recently. With the 0.91 something release of last Epoch, we saw Rune Master and also the Exiled Mage. Exiled Mage has those glove special affixes that drop.
With the
endurance threshold have not been hit recently, and now we see it also showing up on Falconer. Endurance threshold. Just give me just a moment.
Go ahead, you're good.
Endurance threshold as like a stat tends to be something that I argue against. I say that it's not slot efficient. You'd rather be building like hybrid health, percent health, flat health, and not be building any endurance threshold at all. So we can talk about that more later in different videos if we need to, but seeing endurance threshold pop up in little places like this, or popping up in places like your items if you haven't been hit recently, I think that's a really good niche for where you can slot endurance threshold in as a defensive mechanic into the game. I really like this little node right here.
Yeah, I like it too. My only problem with the node is it says if you've been hit recently, so that when the ailment that is hit you, well, the monster that hits you and applies to the ailment, then endurance threshold is going to do nothing for the ignite that's going to take you for half your health. I don't know. I just don't like how damage over time is being shoved into the end game so much to the point where like it makes playing rogue a very interesting experience. Because it's like, why everyone's playing low life on rogue, right? It's because you need more EHP to survive things like that, because Rogue really wants you to be at like 2k, 2.5k HP with a bunch of defensive layers. But since those defensive layers are all based on hits and not on just generic stuff like Werebear, right? It means that the moment that you get touched by anything with an ailment or a damage over time or anything, like for instance, why do I not farm T4 Lightless Arbor with Rogue? That is because the entangling roots that comes across the screen, right, will literally kill you because you'll be at 2k life and none of your defenses work.
My last Blade Dancer that I played had 5k health. Just letting you know.
Well, yeah, that's with like ridiculous amounts of gear and stuff, right? And that's just a Blade Dancer thing, like because Blade Dancer has enough defenses built in its tree that you can afford to have 5k life while also having all those defenses, right? But like I would like to see your gear as well. Like your gear is probably ridiculous.
All right, so I think that about covers the Falconer stuff. We spent some time going over everything that's been leaked over the past week or so, or not leaked, but like announced, revealed. So we went over all the Warlock skills, kind of glazed over one of them that's been in the game before, Soul Feast. Talked about the new stuff though. Talked about the Warlock Mastery passive, and then we talked just a tiny little bit about our thoughts on Falconer, what exists so far. Of course, next week we will have another podcast, because at that point we will have even more information about Falconer coming from maxroll.gg. So that'll be exciting. I look forward to it. I'm gonna go play some last Epoch. Dread, thanks for being here. Appreciate you joining me, buddy.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you so much. All right, Twitch chat, thanks for being here as well. If you're watching here on YouTube or Spotify, be sure to let us know where you're watching so we can make sure that your viewing experience is as good as possible. We'll see you next time. February 21st is the release 1.0. Oh, I should mention, wait a minute. I should mention there are Twitch drops. If you can watch, actually, I heard that they're only active for both you and me. Did you get that email as well? They said that they weren't doing it for anybody else on Twitch. They were only doing it for you and me.
I forgot that I forgot about that email.
Yeah. Check your inbox. Like, make sure you read that.
It got hidden in all the other emails.
Of
like bicycle companies wanting me to promote their product. Yeah, bicycle I forgot companies.
About that. So Twitch jobs begin on February 22nd. They will go for 2 weeks. You can watch anyone on Twitch, especially me and Dread. If you want double drops, get me even faster, and you'll get some in-game rewards for playing Last Epoch. That happens on the 22nd. The game itself is February 21st at noon Eastern time. I can't wait to play it. I'm going to play it for like 3 days straight. I'll see you next time.
After the Falconer comments, they're going to remove the drops.
Oh my goodness. All right. See you next time.
See you.